All right, Dan, here we are. We're the Varsity Voices, and we're here with our Prognosticus episode where we predict, we preview a bit, we maybe give some kind of pre-analysis as well of the upcoming games. And guess what, Dan? We're at week 9.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Don't you feel like we just sat down in week 1? And
Yes.
we're doing Yes.
Yes.
So do I.
I kind of hate how it marks the time. I think I've said that before, but it's like it moves too fast.
It does. It moves so fast. And you and I do a fair amount of prep in between our episodes. And that makes it move fast, too, because I feel like I have a day where I'm like, oh, my God, I've got to look at this. I've got to look at that. I've got to look at some film. I've got to look at some stats, all of that. And all of that put together with, I think, with the games and us covering them on like Friday Night Blitz, just makes the season go by so quick.
Yeah, it really does. And, it's but it is exciting, right?
Oh, yeah.
To see how it shakes out and to see where we're at now with the playoffs on the horizon, pairings show happening, all that being determined with a lot of stuff up in the air going into week 9, records, seeding, people really with their hashtag BATW, so it is, it's fast, but it's exciting. And I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well, Dan. And before we get to some of the games and what you and I think about them and how the Prognosticus has weighed in on them as well, let me just give you a quick update on how you and I did last week in our predictions, right? So week 8, Dan, you were 9-2.
Okay.
Really nice week. And I was 8-3. So I lost another game to you. So I think I'm down 6 now over the course of the season. Although, look at us, 9-2 and 8-3. We're pretty good.
Pretty good. Yeah. And, and we were on the wrong side of a couple games that turned into blowouts too. So
yeah. And that was kind of the, I don't know if I would call it as one thing I learned over the course of week 8, but one thing that kind of surprised me was the number of blowouts in the league.
It is surprising. And if you can say you learned something, some of the bigger, there's a disparity, in the divisions, and we're seeing that from whether it's school size or number of players, roster size, or the talent within that roster.
Right.
There's still a disparity, and I know these coaches work like crazy to narrow that gap, between divisions. But it's like anything else. If you're really good, and you're drawing kids from all over, a lot of those players are going to want to go to places that are going to make the playoffs and going to have sustained runs within the playoffs year after year, and where they get an opportunity to maybe play early. So we've talked about how things filter down from college. Right. I sound like a college recruiter, right? So
you do.
You're going to be sustained success, and play early and get noticed. And so it's no different from college to high school.
Yeah, and then we've got teams that are kind of punching up, right?
Yeah.
You've got, for example, Montini. Last week they played Ignatius, team in the blue division, 8A, and Montini is what, 4A? Maybe 3A or 4A, depending on how things shake out from year to year. And they come out with a big win against Ignatius. And, DePaul Prep, same way. Having a really good season, been able to punch up a little bit. From their class to some of the wins they've gotten over some of the other teams. So that's not all that surprising to me in the Chicago Catholic League, but I do like it that some of these teams are able to play the other division teams or up some classes and, come out on top.
Yeah, it's a big feather in their cap when they do. And it's something that they can use then to build that program, to become one of these that sustain success and have all those things that I talked about, that build your program into a perennial powerhouse.
Right. Okay. So let's go to the games, Dan. And I thought we would just start right at the top with the Blue Division. So this week, they're all in-division games.
In-division games.
That's how I'm going to categorize it.
Yes, that's the easiest way to do it.
In-division games. So we'll start with the Blue Division. And this is Mount Carmel versus Loyola. Probably a game that everybody in the state is looking forward to, looking towards. These are two obviously top-notch programs with a great history. Last year, I think Loyola won 23-21, and last year they snapped Mount Carmel's 22-game winning streak, which is probably still something that might be
stuck in the craw.
Stuck in the craw, yes, of Mount
caravan.
Carmel.
Yeah.
So, do you think that plays anything into the game this year?
I do. Yeah,
you do.
Think,
okay.
Oh yeah, I think if you think about it and remember, way back in the day, as a player, it's one of those things that you can use as motivation. Not that they'd need any extra motivation for this week, but both teams are 6-2. And I think that there's definitely bragging rights along with seedings, on the line. So there's plenty of motivation. And I do think last year's game plays into it.
Yeah. And I think Loyola comes into this game with a 5-game win streak now, Dan.
Yeah.
And it looks like Ryan Fitzgerald is going to be back this week. I saw that they just rested him last week, try and get him over kind of a nagging hamstring injury. So obviously that makes a big difference in this game. Mount Carmel, after a bit of a hiccup against Brother Rice, when Jack Elliott was out, Mount Carmel seems to be back to its dominant self with some really impressive wins over the last 2 weeks. So I think this game, again, is going to live up to its billing.
Yeah. And, those QBs are back. Are they 100%? We've talked a ton about running QBs this year. And I don't know how much we focused on the downside, which is the higher likelihood of injury, whether it's a hamstring, whether it's getting hit and it's a shoulder, whatever it might be.
Yep.
There's a price to pay for having these mobile quarterbacks. And, I'm looking at, if are they both 100%? And, we always kind of say if they're playing, they are, but either way, there's still plenty of stars on both sides of the ball from, on Mount Carmel, Daniel Taylor, Quentin Burrell, and Cooper Lehman. They make any QB look really good. They certainly help. On Loyola, Drew McPherson is an absolute workhorse for them, and he will need to be, because I'm guessing Loyola wants that time of possession. When you see how Mount Carmel plays, and we've talked about how my opinion is they wear you down in the passing game. The game to me is going to go how the DBs play against the opposing quarterbacks. So there's good ones there on both sides of the ball. So you've got Donovan Robinson, Charlie Pryor, Mickey Maher, Drew McPherson when he plays both ways for Loyola. Mount Carmel counters with Javi Payne, their two-way stud, Cooper Lehman, and I have here in my notes, I'm like, my pick is for whoever's QB is at 100%.
Yeah.
If they are, I go with I'm going to go with Mount Carmel at home, Joe.
Okay. Yeah. And I agree with you on that, using that as criteria, Dan, for this game. I think it's a good one. The other one I thought of as I was looking at some of this was, who's got the better kicker?
Yeah. You know what? I thought of that too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know Loyola, I think last week their kicker, Zachman, I believe he kicked 2 field goals, a 32-yarder and a 25-yarder. I thought that's pretty good. And if this game comes down to kicking or a last-minute field goal, maybe Loyola's got the upper hand there, although I'm not sure who Mount Carmel's kicker is. But anyways, all that said, Dan, I am with you on this. This game is at Mount Carmel, and I'm going to pick Mount Carmel over Loyola.
Okay, so
we are on to the next game, which is St. Ignatius and Brother Rice. Brother Rice, 5-3. They had a big win over St. Laurence last week, who was 6-1 at the time. And you and I talked about in our predictions episode last week, Dan, whether or not St. Lawrence had played kind of the level of competition that Brother Rice was going to bring in. And sure enough, Brother Rice came into this game and really just kind of handed it to St. Lawrence. I'm trying to see what the score was here.
35-6.
35-6, right? So I don't know what that means in the grand scheme of things, but what I do know is that Brother Rice seems to really be on a roll here after a 1-3 start. Now they've won 4 in a row, Dan.
Yeah, they've won 4 in a row. St. Ignatius has lost 3 in a row. So, and St. Ignatius needs this game just for a fighting chance, to get on the hope meter, and Brother Rice really probably does not want to be looking at a 5-4 going into the playoff pairing. So, yeah, the thing I see in this game is what I've kind of found looking at film is teams that give St. Ignatius problems are teams that have great size up front, which obviously Brother Rice does with King Liggins and guys that can run, like Christian Pierce, linebacker.
Yeah.
So those are the teams that have kind of frustrated St. Ignatius, and have been able to maybe physically, if not completely across the board, Ignatius is still capable of winning one-on-one matchups. But I think as a group, I think when teams are like this, and built like Brother Rice and some of these teams in the blue, I think that gives the Wolfpack problems. So my pick is for Brother Rice in this one, Joe, on the road.
Yeah. Okay. And as you mentioned, it is on the road. One thing I like about Brother Rice in this is they've got a really balanced attack on offense, with CJ Gray, leading the way at quarterback. And they've got an outstanding defense. Even though they're 5-3 and have lost some tough games, I think their defense matches up well with what St. Ignatius is going to try and do on offense with, trying to run the ball mostly. And I think Brother Rice may force Ignatius into throwing the ball here, which they can do. I love their quarterback, Jack Wanzung. I'm just not sure that's what they want to do. And I think Brother Rice comes out with the win in this game too, Dan.
Okay, we're 2 for 2.
2 for 2. All right, let's go to the next game, and I believe this is Green Division, Dan.
Yeah.
This is St. Rita versus IC. St. Rita 6-2, easily handled St. Patrick last week, 48-7. You've got the same players on St. Rita's side, stepping up as we've mentioned from week to week. Your stars step up in games. You got their quarterback Stephen Armbruster, wide receiver Walter Jones. He's averaging over 65 yards per game receiving. Nick Herman, running back, 75 yards per game rushing. So they're well balanced as well. On defense, Justin Buckner, who we've talked about a lot.
Yeah, he's a stud.
He is a stud. Previous Zuko's Dog of the Week winner. He leads the team in tackles and sacks. I see 4-4 now with a 48-28 win over St. Viator last week. And I know they'd really like to get this game in order to really secure a playoff spot. I don't think they want to go into the pairings with only 4 wins. So this is going to be a really interesting game, Dan.
Yeah, and hashtag BATW for IC, right?
Yes,
4-4.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a must win, and they have to go through a really tough St. Rita team that's rolling a little bit right now. Both teams have won 2 in a row. Guys stepping up to make plays when they need to. You mentioned some of the guys on St. Rita. IC has Foley Calcagno that seems to make plays every week. Dominic Hulak, Will Breich has been, just getting better and better and better. Another really mobile quarterback. but they have to go through, a dog-led defense with Justin Buckner, so St. Rita has a ton of star power in this one. And I think they put a damper on IC season, and this was one, Joe, that is kind of important for the Catholic League, because it'll be one of those teams in IC that you can say that they can go and look and say, we're probably better than a lot of teams in this bracket that I'm looking at that we may not get in. And that frustrates some of these coaches, I'm sure,
it does.
And so really big game for IC. I know their backs are against the wall. That said, I think they've been too inconsistent, even though they're kind of they've looked better, so I'm going to pick St. Rita in this one.
Yeah, and you said inconsistent. One of the things I was thinking about when I was looking at this game is I feel like IC has just been so up and down this year. And, for a variety of reasons, one thing I do like is last week they really seemed to put it together, on both sides of the ball. I think they had over 400 yards rushing last week, Dan. On defense, they had 4 interceptions. So, maybe they're peaking at the right time here, which would be, now's the right time. You got to get this game. And I'm not sure they've got enough to do that either. I'm going with St. Rita as well.
Okay.
All right. So let's go to St. Francis and Nazareth, Dan. Another big game in this division. Nazareth 7-1 after really just a blowout over Benet last week. Let's see. St. Francis 6-2 after they beat DePaul Prep 41-38 in overtime last week. So Naz is coming in after winning 5 in a row. They had an early season loss to Mount Carmel. But now I've won 5 in a row, and they've done it fairly convincingly over the last couple of weeks. Their stars, their key players are playing like it. In their quarterback, Logan Malachuk, wide receivers, James Penley and Jake Sestone. They've got a really good sophomore running back in Charles Calhoun. Obviously we've talked about some of the guys on defense, linebacker Gabe Kaminsky, who was one of our dogs, as well as Garrett Reese, who was one of our dogs. So
yeah, double dogs
on on the Naz side. So this, although I think this is going to be a really interesting game, I'm going to go with Nazareth in this one. Dan, what do you think here?
They're both squarely in the playoffs, right? They're both in 5A, which to me adds an element of interest to this, because you'd think St. Francis would love to get to 7 wins, and make Naz 7-2. So they both would likely maybe avoid one another for as long as possible. I think,
right.
I think that would try and be the goal here. So both teams can really set themselves up in the bracket for a great first few rounds. High powered offenses, some defensive standouts, Naz with the more familiar names, like you said, but St. Francis, has our current dog in Will Alt, and they've got some other guys I really like on that defense. I just think Naz, along with Marist, is playing the best football in the conference, I think, right now. And I think they have, I'm going to go with your theory on the loaded star power, where Naz is absolutely fits that bill. So I'm also picking Naz in this one.
Okay. And so we've got no breaks so far in our picks. We are in simpatico.
It's a good way for me to secure the regular season victory.
Yeah, I was hoping you'd be maybe going the other way on some of these games.
Oh, it's not over yet. We'll see.
Yeah, but I'm down by 6 games, Dan.
Yeah, there we go.
I think we're done.
So
yeah, I think we're done. Okay, so that's this episode, folks. We'll talk to you next week. No. All right, so we both agree on Naz in that one. And the next game is Marist and Notre Dame. Damn, Marist. I saw I don't know if they moved up or if they're ranked 8th in the state, at least via Max Preps. They may be probably somewhere around the same in some of the other rankings, I would think. They had an easy win last week against Marmion, 42-0. So they now moved to 7-1. They've rattled off 4 wins in a row after that loss in overtime to Joliet Catholic. They are clicking on all cylinders right now, Dan. The quarterback Jake Ritter, wide receivers Brendan Dorn and Gavin Obrachta, the running back John McCullough. Defense playing really well with one of our dogs, Brad Fitzgibbon, on the defensive line. Another Dog Pound member, Josh Laura. It all points to a really tough day for Notre Dame, who did get a win last week, shutting out Leo 28-0. But Notre Dame, as we talked about, they're 3-5. They've been shut out 4 times this year. I'm sure they'll love me saying that, but we've got, they've had some trouble scoring some points. So I'm not sure how they're going to fare against this Marist team.
Yeah, it's a tough draw for Notre Dame, as they'd love to get 4 wins and start playing with some math, to at least keep it interesting. I've talked about Troy Nightingale now 3 weeks in a row, and how I think he's got a great future. He's a great player.
Yeah.
I just don't think they have enough offensively to take on Marist at full strength. You talked about Marist balance, both on the offensive and defensive side of the ball, and they're playing really well. I along with Naz, like I said, I think they're playing the most consistently in the Catholic League right now. I think they'd be a tough out for any team, regardless of division right now.
Right.
But so a really tough draw for Notre Dame. Marist, again, great place to play. Really, really strong home field advantage. So my pick is for Marist in this one, Joe.
Okay. Yep. And I'm with you on that, Dan. I'm picking Marist as well. So again, there's no chance for me. I'm hashtag BATW right now.
Your hashtag OTG on the ground.
Out of it. Hashtag out of it. Yeah.
Hashtag done.
Yeah. Hashtag done. I like that. That's my favorite. All right. So the next game is Providence and Joliet Catholic. A South Side matchup here, Dan. Joliet Catholic 5-3. But they are coming off a loss to Mount Carmel last week, 35-21. Providence 4-4. They beat Marian Catholic. Providence squarely in the hashtag BATW arena, so to speak, and this for the second year in a row. I think Providence really needs a win here against Joliet Catholic in order, to really kind of secure a spot in the playoffs. That's going to be tough. I know Providence, they scored 34 points last week against Marian Catholic, and it seems like they put some things together on offense, Dan. Gavin Hagan, who, their coach, Providence's coach, Tyler Plants, thinks is one of the best players in the state. He scored 3 touchdowns, had an outstanding game. It's hard to argue with that. Yeah. So what are you looking at for this game, Dan? What do you think are some of the key points?
First of all, hashtag BATW alert, like you said. Also the mileage alert, one of my favorite things, 7.4 miles.
Nice.
Door to door. Yep. So
not bad.
A rivalry game. We talked about a lot of these players knowing one another. I'm guessing, from the time they started playing football. It's got to be a defensive battle. And Providence has some horses on defense like Dom and Felice. Everything Gavin Hagan, but so does JCA. Daniel Rouse and Rocco Powell. So they've both got some really strong defensive players. JCA's when I look at Joliet Catholic's defense, they held Nazareth to 16 points.
Right.
Which is I think their lowest output, this year by a wide margin. So So it's their defense is really good. And I think Providence, knows Joliet Catholic well, knows how to practice against them, knows their personnel. That all that said, so I think Joliet Catholic, I've always said they don't care what you know about them. I feel like they can tell you we're going to run power here on this play, and
Right.
and they dare you to stop it.
Yeah.
So I think Joliet Catholic just might have too much. I think it could be a low scoring game, but the pick here is for JCA.
Yeah, I think with Joliet Catholic's running backs, like you just mentioned, they don't care if you know what they're running and who they're going to hand it off to, because Larry Stringham, Nate McGreeny, two running backs for Joliet Catholic having really good years. They run the ball really hard. I think over the course of this game, they just wear Providence down, and I know that's how they like to play, and that's how they win. Providence would have to really kind of put everything all together and play a perfect game, in my opinion, in order to knock off Joliet Catholic. Even though it's at Providence, I'm picking Joliet Catholic in this game, Dan.
Yeah, I can't believe, Joe, that Joliet Catholic is 5-3. I feel like they've been much better than that. The kind of Catholic league this year a little bit. Both these teams could say that. But both these teams could go on runs in playoffs that end with a state semifinalist or a state finalist. It's unbelievable to think where these teams are at, and I know they both want to get that victory. So really interesting game this week, one to hang a star on.
Yeah, and just one more thing on that. I mean, Joliet Catholic 5-3. They, with those people who follow football closely in the state of Illinois, and when you look at their strength of schedule, Joliet Catholic is still in the top 25 in the state of Illinois at 5-3. So that tells you something right there. Yeah.
The losses to Oswego, who's in the top 10, Naz top 5.
Right.
Mount Carmel top 5. So it's not like they're scuffling along.
Losing
teams.
Played a killer schedule for sure. All right, so that brings us to St. Viator and St. Patrick, Dan. So St. Viator lost this past week, 48-28 to IC. And St. Patrick lost as well, 48-7 to St. Rita. Now, St. Viator, after winning their first 3 games, Dan, has lost 5 in a row. I do think, after looking at a little bit of the film on the game, that their offense seemed to be working a little bit better with Cooper Komet. He seemed to kind of take over the game. One thing I don't like is I feel like it's all Cooper Komet or nothing, right, for St. Viator on the offense right now. So, I'm not sure what that means. We know St. Patrick has a good defense, even though they're 2-6. But this game is at St. Viator, Dan, and I'll go right to it and then let you talk. But I'm going to pick St. Viator in this game over St. Patrick.
All right, Joe. I think we've got our first difference.
All right.
So I'm picking St. Pat's in this one. Even though, like you said, it's at St. Viator, I think Pat's is coming along. I think if you ask their coaches and players, they wish the season were 5 more games. Because I feel like I've said it for the past few weeks, they've figured something out. They've got a great strong running game. They can control the football. They're kind of falling into that mode where they figured out, the way to play complementary football is to run the ball, play solid defense. I think St. Viator's just reeling, and like you said, I think some folks may have figured something out against them, that they can run the football and hold on to the ball and keep the ball away from Cooper Komet. So that's how I think this game shakes out, Joe. I'm picking what will be an upset, and I'm going to pick St. Pat's over St. Viator.
All right, I've got that marked down, Dan, and that'll be an interesting game to watch. So I'm looking forward to it on Friday. So the next game is Benet and DePaul Prep, which is going to be a really good game. I think. I know Benet is. I don't know. They've had a tough couple of weeks here. Last week lost to Naz 62-14. They lost to, who was it, Fenwick the week before.
Yeah.
Pretty handily. I know there were some injuries on the Benet side. As far as their offense was concerned, and but Benet was scoring so many points through the first, 4 or 5 games of the season. Then, they have not been able to score those same amount of points over the last couple of weeks. I don't know if that's because of the injuries or because of facing some better defenses, but this game will probably say something about Benet, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's they haven't had any running game the past few weeks, and again we talked about a little about injuries, so when a team has to rely on the pass, you can prep for that a little bit. I don't know how much if Marty Radgowski's still kind of banged up, how much more Ryan Kabaki can do, in the running game, and because you don't want him banged up for the playoffs, right? That's the last thing you want. So it's interesting because I feel like Benet needs this game just to feel better about itself. Obviously you want the better seed, but you've also got to feel like things are getting righted if you're Benet. And DePaul Prep is not the best team to do that against. They've been really good, losing a tough one last week, but they had won 2 in a row prior to that. Big win against Carmel a couple weeks ago. So I know they're feeling really good about themselves. They've got a potent offense of their own and a passing game. 2 teams that really seem very similar, Joe, to me on offense, especially. I think, most similar players in the league might be Ryan Kabaki and Juju Rodriguez. They, from a stature, how they play, all that stuff. They're both heady quarterbacks that run their offense perfectly. Big time receivers, Matt Osterman, versus Luke Doyle at Benet and Braden Peavy and Luke Wild. So a lot of similarities between these 2 teams. I think that Benet probably doesn't want me to pick them. Every time I pick them, they get crushed. So I'm going to go with that this week. I think DePaul Prep still feels really good even after a loss last week. Still probably in that roll mode. So I'm going to go with DePaul in this one.
All right, Dan. And I was listening to you talk about all those different things, about this game and about Benet. And I do think they're going to want to kind of right the ship, especially going into the playoffs. So that I think they come out and really show something a little bit different this week versus the last couple weeks, and show more like they were earlier in the season. And I'm going to pick Benet in this game, Dan.
All right. Very good. Right. They'll be happy with you. Very angry with me.
Right. Yeah. I need them to be happy with me.
Right.
For a little bit.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. We've got Leo and Marmion. This is Saturday game, Dan. Yeah. Marmion 4-4. They got shut out by Marist 42-0 last week. Really kind of 2 lopsided losses in a row. I think Marmion needs to kind of get back on track here, and they're #BATW with 4 wins. They need this game against Leo. This game is at Leo. Leo 1-7 after they lost to Notre Dame 28-0 last week. Unfortunately, Leo's been shut out a fair amount of times. Even though we like some of their talent, and we've talked about that. I think that Marmion takes this game and gets to 5-4 and gets in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think I think there's some danger associated with this game if you are Marmion, right? So Leo has nothing to lose, NTL, right? And
Right.
and they can be really dangerous. So we talked about their offense kind of sputtering a little bit and not really working on schedule. They've got playmakers though, and they've got guys that if they get a foot in front of you, they take it to the house. So I really think that Marmion has to try and control the football. I do think they will. I think their defense is pretty stout, and in games that have been at or near their division, they've been good defensively, able to run the ball. I think these two games, the previous couple weeks, kind of callous them, from how they feel from a schedule perspective. And I think Marmion comes out ahead on this one.
Okay. All right. We're in agreement there. Next game is Montini and St. Laurence. Both teams 6-2. St. Lawrence comes off a tough loss, kind of a big loss against Brother Rice last week, 35-6. Whereas Montini probably coming in flying high this week after they beat Ignatius last week, 28-7. St. Lawrence has had trouble last couple weeks scoring some points, and maybe you can attribute that to their quarterback, Chase Kwiatkowski, being out injured the last couple of games. This game could be a defense versus defense game when you look at it. And, if that's the case, I love the way Montini's defense is playing right now. I also think they found, some things on offense, obviously, with their quarterback, Israel Abrams, and some of their other players. But I still kept coming back to the defenses in this game, and I think Montini's is really playing well at the right time of the year. I think they're going to be able to hold St. Laurence down. So I'm picking Montini in this game, Dan.
Yeah, Joe, I'm continuing to ride the Bronco.
Oh,
and going with Montini in this as well. I again, the hope is that Kwiatkowski plays, and it does make them a different team. But Montini, defensively, I think they are, kind of what we thought they were at the beginning of the year. When you look at what they've done, holding Marist to 21 points and Fenwick to 14 points. And they have, when we've seen those teams really, really kind of come to life offensively as of late. And I think that they are an underrated defense. Like you mentioned, they're getting great quarterback play from Israel Abrams, playing very complimentary football. They are a small school that plays really big. So I think this is going to be a really good game. I'd like that it's at Montini. So because Kwiatkowski is seems like he's I don't know if he'll be 100% even if he will play. But I'm gonna go with Montini in this one, Joe.
Okay, all right, Dan. So that brings us to our last game, I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think so.
And that is.
No, I don't think so, Joe. There's two, right? Carmel Fenwick.
There's Carmel Fenwick
and Marian Catholic.
Oh, Marian Catholic, Rochelle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, let's do Carmel Fenwick first.
Yeah, let's do Carmel Fenwick. Okay, so Fenwick, who's having a really good year this year. No shame in them losing last week to Mount Carmel 35-10. But they've got to kind of forget about that, in my opinion, and pick up where they left off prior to that game against Carmel here. And I think Carmel is struggling a bit. They played Loyola and lost to them 34-16. Even though they had some really good, they had a really good performance by Trey Taylor, their quarterback. He threw for over 270 yards and a touchdown. And he found Jaron Black, their wide receiver, several times. He had over or close to 100 yards receiving. But Fenwick was on a 4-game win streak, Dan. Their record's still 6-2. We know how good they are. Carmel, 3 3-5. And I mean, can you say hashtag, BATW for them?
For sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Got to get a win and do some math. And, when you look at their schedule over the season, though, Joe, I mean, 5 teams that are currently 6 teams that are currently 6-2 on their schedule. Maybe the toughest schedule in the league. So
right.
You got to think if a 4-win team gets in 5A, that Carmel looks really good if they can beat Fenwick this week.
Right.
I just don't know if they can. And seeing that it's at Fenwick. How good Fenwick's playing. Fenwick is one of those teams that wants to get back in a winning role and improve their seed. So they're also likely 5A, but or maybe they're maybe. But anyway, they it could be a really, really tough game. I think Carmel lets it loose and pulls out all the stops this week. I just don't think it's enough. I think Fenwick matches up with them really well. I've always loved Fenwick's DBs and how they hit you and cover. And I think they do a great job against the pass. So my pick, Joe, is going to be for Fenwick this week. Okay.
And I'm with you on that, Dan. I mean, I know Carmel's offense can score, and I know, they can be pretty explosive with Trey Taylor, as well as the running back Donovan Day. They got a really good wide receiver in Kai Owens. But when I look at Fenwick's defense and only giving up, I think 13, just over 13 points a game, and 35 points, 35 of those were last week to Mount Carmel. So we know what they were doing prior to they went up against Mount Carmel. But, so I like, and this game is at Fenwick. I like Fenwick as well in this game, Dan.
Yeah. Nate Marshall, dog of the week. Tommy Thies, Jack Paris. I really, really like their team and how they play. And I've always said that, watching film, Fenwick will knock your block off. And so I think that's the difference in the game this weekend.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So the Marian Catholic Rochelle game, I think that's taking place on Thursday, Dan. So when I saw some of the information on it, I thought, is this game actually happening? But it's on both of the school's websites. So I think it is. But Marian Catholic, who is 2-6, and they're going up against a really good Rochelle team, who I believe is 7-1.
7-1.
Yeah. So. And then they're traveling out to Rochelle as well. So that, do you know the mileage for that, Dan? How far apart they are?
Because it's not a rivalry.
Yeah. Maybe that's why they're doing it on Thursday.
Many, many, many miles apart.
It's a lot of miles.
Yes.
Yeah. I think Marian is just their football players, their football team is just not going to school that day because they're just going to travel. Out to Rochelle. So,
right. Yeah, it's good on both teams for making this happen. You'd hate to see Marian Catholic and the seniors especially lose their last week, and I don't know what happened to Rochelle's schedule that they had an opening as well. But yeah, they are a really good team. They've won by some big scores. The game they lost was to Sycamore, traditional power, highly ranked school in their division. So they are they're going to be no small test for Marian. But I'm picking Marian, Joe. I'm gonna pick the upset. Yes, they're going to go in on Thursday night. They're going to be fired up. NTL #NTL and shock the Hubs from Rochelle.
Yeah, I would love to see Marian do that. I'd love to see them end their season on a high note here. We know they've had a rough season. They played a tough schedule too, right?
Yeah.
And they've got a good defense. They found some things on offense, but it just doesn't seem like they've been able to put it all together. So I'm, I hate to go against them. I'm going to pick Rochelle in this, Dan, and only because I'm trying.
Need the wins.
I need the wins.
Yes.
I do. Yeah, Yeah, so that's it. I mean, we've differed on a couple of games, but not enough for me to make up my the difference right now. But that's okay. What I will do is probably go from week to week and look at it that way, Dan.
There,
and
whatever you have to do to make
me feel better about myself. Yes. Yeah. All right. So that's our Prognosticus episode, Dan. And I don't know, did you get a lot of input from your Prognosticus this week?
I did. They're very opinionated on some of these games, and I really leaned on him for St. Viator. My pick is St. Pat's over St. Viator. I think about it. The Prognosticus gives me his input, which I use to base my decision off of. So, some pretty, not a ton. I don't get a ton of talk like you get, but I get pointed in the right direction for sure.
Yeah, I have to turn my microphone down a bit when he's talking, because sometimes he just goes on and on and on. But he gave me a few tidbits here as well this week that I took into account. He's happy to be at the regular season, but he did say that he wants to stick around through the playoffs, Dan. Yes.
Yeah, because he's yet to show up. So
right, he's yet to show up. And he said maybe in the playoffs. You can't rely on him too much.
Which explains maybe why you're not winning in our picks.
That's true. That's true. All right. Well, people, thank you for listening, wherever you're listening from. If you would like to leave us comments or send us emails, you can do that. You can leave us comments on social media or on wherever you're listening or getting your podcast from. We would appreciate that. We'd love to hear from you. This week we will. Let's see. Is that tomorrow? No. Friday. Friday will be our last regular season Friday Night Blitz. So make sure you come back and listen to that. We'll be streaming live as well. So we've got a lot for you coming up at the end of this week and for week 9. But most of all, we appreciate you listening. Dan, you got something?
Joe?
Yes.
Friday Night Blitz, they can join the almost 500 people.
Yes,
that were on last week.
Yeah,
and at various points throughout the night. So thank you to all the people who are listening and finding some value and having a little fun with it as well. It's exactly what we wanted. They're coming to us for scores and some entertainment. So join that growing list of people reaching out and listening to Friday Night Blitz.
Yes, absolutely. Join us for Friday Night Blitz. Thank you for joining us on this one, and we will talk to you soon.